So the newest Resident Evil in the series, Resident Evil 8 Village, has just come out, and I've gotta say that I think it's phenomenal. Gameplay-wise, atmosphere-wise, it's just great. The only part of the entire thing that I really had issues with was Heisenburg's factory, and that's probably just because I don't find industrial things all that interesting. Other than that though, the characters are all really fascinating and distinct, the scenery is beautiful, it's just a very enjoyable experience that I would recommend to anyone who enjoyed Resident Evil 7, because this is a true continuation of that. Now, as for what we'll be talking about today, I thought it would be fun to go over the main story of the game and just kind of point out some things that I thought were interesting and talk about the ending. So, obviously, big time spoiler warning here. If you've not played the game, I highly recommend you get through it because, like I said, I think it's very well done. If you've already played it or don't care about spoilers though, let's get into it.
Chris? What the hell?
Sorry, Ethan.
No! What? Why?
So, to kick off my thoughts, let me just say that this game was totally not what I expected it to be in terms of story. Prior to the game's release, I avoided almost everything I could about Resident Evil 8 because I really wanted to go in not knowing what to expect. For me, from the trailers that I'd seen, I thought that they were leading into Chris being the one who was going to die. I envisioned it as Chris would be so hardlined on bioterror that he kills Mia and takes Rose because of Mia's involvement with the connections in RE7, and Rose because she would have had some kind of mutation from Mia's exposure to Evelyn. But if you've played the game, then you know that that's definitely not how it went down. For a very brief synopsis, Chris shoots Mia, who is actually a woman named Miranda, who has the ability to take on the appearance of anyone she desires. Miranda's goal is to kidnap Rose, Ethan's daughter, and use her to bring her own daughter back to life. The reason that she needs Rose is because Rose has some kind of mold powers that allow her to regenerate from any wound or something like that. You would think that these powers come from Mia, but in actuality, they seem to come from Ethan, who has seemingly been dead since his initial encounter with Jack in the attic of the guest house in Resident Evil 7.
3 years ago, the Baker house. You were murdered by Jack. You died there 3 years ago.
Now, that's the basis of the story, mainly as it pertains to Ethan. And while it's honestly kind of confusing in some aspects, it does provide a valid reasoning as to how Ethan can do things like reattach his hand when Mia cuts it off in Resident Evil 7, or reattach his other hand when Lady Dimitrescu cuts it off in Resident Evil 8. I like that they try to explain how Ethan can take so much punishment and just keep going. I thought it was just because the herbal mix was some kind of very potent stuff, but apparently it's because he's a mold person. In some aspects, it makes sense for him to be a mold person. Like, I always thought that it was kind of odd that he could see child Evelyn, because that was a side effect of her infecting people with mold. But I always just assumed that they cured him like they cured Zoe and Mia, but apparently not. This also leads us to the finale of the game, where Ethan sacrifices himself to save his daughter Rose and Chris. I think that they all could have made it out, but for some reason that I'm not sure about, Ethan was degrading anyways, so it made sense for him to stay so he didn't slow Chris down. The Mega My Seat is also a pretty confusing thing for me at the moment. I think Miranda was getting her strength from it, and it was also how she was going to bring her daughter back to life. But I'm not positive about how it works, so I'll have to wrap my head around it further for the lore videos that I'll be doing for her down the line, because I'm sure it's going to come up.
Alpha to squad. I've located the Mega My Seat.
So now we can end this mess after all.
About damn time.
Next, let's talk about Chris and where they seem to be going with the story in the future. So, like I said, they overemphasized Chris in the trailers beyond his real importance in the story. Chris's involvement in the events is important, but he's not a major asset to Ethan, and he kind of causes the events. But Miranda was gonna take Rose anyway, so you can't really blame him for attempting to kill her while he could. He's not a major villain like they seem to be trying to lead you into thinking in the trailers. As for what Chris actually did in the game, I hate to say it, but it just makes him seem kind of stupid. The big reveal that Miranda was actually pretending to be Mia is a big revelation, but Chris could have said both times that he saw Ethan, that wasn't your wife. And even if Ethan didn't understand it, it would have made the situation less difficult for both parties. I mean, in terms of this being a game, it makes sense to save it for a big reveal, but they spend a bit too much time together for Chris's excuse to be, there wasn't enough time to explain. In terms of what they seem to be setting up for, to me there are two possibilities. The first is something to do with Ethan's daughter Rose, who we can see visiting her father's gravesite when she's older. Now, how much older is kind of a guess. Assuming that she ages normally and doesn't have some kind of side effect from the mold, I'd say she's at least a teenager. What they do with her, who knows, but I could see them somehow continuing Ethan's story through Rose in some way. Perhaps having her track down the connections or something like that. The second is something to do with the BSAA and their use of bioweapons when they sent them in to help with the situation at the end of the game. The BSAA obviously being the organization that Chris used to be involved with. Now, I don't really know what they're doing with this. I think this is the first time they revealed the BSAA's shady dealings, but I mean, the setup is there if they want to explore it.
BSAA didn't send soldiers. This is a bioweapon.
What the hell were they thinking?
The final thing that I really want to talk about is that Capcom really kind of just shoehorned Umbrella into this one for some reason. I don't really have much to say about it, but if you watch some of the trailers, then you probably noticed this symbol in some of them, which led people to think that maybe they were going to delve into the origins of Umbrella to an extent. And it was really just kind of an awkward footnote to me that didn't seem to belong. At the end of the game, where you can see Miranda's laboratory, you can find a note written from Oswell E. Spencer, a co-founder of Umbrella, who says that he took inspiration for the symbol of Umbrella from the middle of the family's crests, or something to that effect. I don't know, it just seems kind of irrelevant to the grander context of the game. I guess it ties the world in a bit more, and it serves that purpose, but I just didn't really see much of a point to its addition.
Spencer. Here. No way.
Anyways, those are some of my thoughts that I picked out from my time with this game. I'll of course be delving deeper into the game for the lore of individual characters and things like that, but I just wanted to do a little video about some of my initial thoughts on it. Also, if you're wondering, I'm not done with the original Resident Evil videos either. There are still a few characters that I want to get to in that as well. But yeah. I would highly recommend this game if for some reason you're watching this and haven't played it. It's probably my second or third favorite game in the entire series, behind Resident Evil 4 and maybe behind the remake of 1. Maybe just because it's new, but I really enjoyed it. Anyways, thank you all for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you all in the next one.